Parang gusto ko nang kumain ng Korean food. Makapunta nga ng Korea para makakain naman ako ng tteokbokki o yung chicken nila na medyo maanghang. Tara, samahan niyo ako. Punta tayong Korea! So, as of now, lalakad-lakad muna siya ako. So, dito po ako ngayon, like I've said, dito sa Suvarnabhumi Airport, Bangkok, Thailand. So, my very cutesy dad traveling to Korea. Annyeonghaseyo! It's open for check-in. So, mag-check-in na po siya ako. Korean Air.
영원히 나는 사랑이 되어라 사랑
Parang gusto kong kumain ng Korean food. Makapunta nga ako ng mall. Maraming Korean restaurant doon. Tara, kain tayo.
globalization. For example, for this is the gadgets. Before, we use pen and paper to write a letter to our loved ones or friends not far away from us. Was our communication with them. But over the years, gadgets came and our communication with our family became easier.
Ay, nakakamiss naman ng asawa ko. Ilang buwan na akong hindi nakakontak sa kanya eh. Ang hirap talaga pag nasa ibang bansa ang asawa mo. Nakakamiss ang boses. Ang hirap, ang layo-layo talaga. Alam nga naman dito siya magtrabaho. Ang liit-liit ng sahod, kaya kailangan ko niyang lumabas ng ibang bansa. Tatawagin ko kaya. May load pa ba ako? May load pa ako, 50 pesos. Try kong i-contact. Ayaw pang sagutin. Ikaw naman. Mamaya na lang kaya. Baka busy sa trabaho. Wala na akong pambayad ng kurente. Sa asawa ko, hindi pa nagpapadala. Ang hirap. Wala akong pang-load. Paano ito siya tatawagan? 3 months na hindi siya nag-contact at wala na akong naputol ng kurente. Paano ito? Pag mag-load ako, ang dali lang ubos. Hirap naman ito. Kung mas mabuti nga ngayon kasi gamit ang cellphone kaysa noon. Sulat-sulat lang, telegrama lang. Papaload na lang kaya ako. Ay, ito na naman, nagbe-video ko na naman ang asawa ko. Hello, Bey, kumusta ka na dyan?
Ito, okay lang. May training po.
Ikaw talaga, napaka-joker mo. Salamat pala sa padala mong money, ha? Ang dali ko mabili ito.
Hotel and restaurant. I'm gonna give you something to talk about.
Okay naman.
Mabuti naman, hindi naman na-stress na employer mo na ano, bago. Okay lang? Nagpapa-install tayo ng wifi, diba? Mabuti naman at pwede ka mga makapagtawag sa akin. Nagtrabaho ka, diba? Hindi tulad noon, grabe. Every 3 months lang tayo magkapunta. Ngayon, bakit araw-araw? It used to be so difficult for us to contact with our relatives, spouses, family abroad back then. But now, because of the smartphones, Android phones, it's easy for us to contact with them. Social globalization has truly improved so much in recent times.
Here are the few of the key aspects of cultural globalization. Number 1. Media and entertainment. Global access to movies, music, and television allows people from different countries to consume and enjoy the same content. Let's say, for example, K-pop in Latin America and Hollywood films in Asia. Number 2. Technology and social media platforms such as Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube accelerate the sharing of trends, values, and cultural expressions worldwide in real time. Lastly, boxing can also be considered as cultural globalization through global reach, cultural exchange, global events through media, training, and migration. Boxing is a strong example of cultural globalization. Originating in the West, it has spread worldwide and became a global sport. Fighters from different countries showcase their culture, and international events promote cross-cultural exchange. Media coverage, global fan bases, and multinational training all contribute to boxing's role in blending and sharing cultures globally. Positive effects: greater cultural awareness and appreciation, access to diverse experiences, arts, and ideas, global solidarity and shared causes, for example, climate action and human rights. Negative effects: cultural homogenization, smaller cultures risk being overshadowed, loss of local traditions and languages, Western cultural dominance in media and consumer culture. That's all for our presentation about cultural globalization.
Suicidal, they say it's over. Now we're questioning and now we're fighting.
Ang dapat siya tama, yung siya tama. Tanawi tayo, yung siya tama. Yung siya tama.
You're dating other guys.
What is the politics today? So in the Philippines, which is I research about politics, in the Philippines, current political issues related globalization include concerns about economic inequality, human rights violations, and impact of globalization on the monastic industries and the environment. So, alongside debates about the role of the state in managing globalization's effect. So, political and social issues like political popularization. Yes, this is main issues of this day and this present year or sa ngayon po. Ito po yung pinapa-iral po lahat ng tao dito sa ating bansa po. Which is political polarization. Popularization. Which is ipapopular po natin yung kung sino yung tumatakbo na maganda yung plataforma, which is yun po ay nakikita po natin yan mamaya po sa video po. And this political polarization, the Philippines has experienced increased political polarization with debates or other issues like the war on drugs, human rights, and the rule of the military. The influence of foreign actors, the Philippines is also subject to the influence of foreigners, actors including United States and China, which can impact its political and economic decision. The rise of populism, the rise of populist leaders and movements has also been a feature of Philippines politics. So, yun po yung sinasabi ko kanina na which is may popularization kung ano yung gusto mo kung sino yung nagustuhan mo na program o yung magandang plataforma, ay ina-idolize mo na talaga, which is hindi ka na makakaalis kung ano yung gusto mo sa kanya, which is kasi gusto mo yung palakaran niya, no? So which is the rise of populist leaders and movements has also been a feature of Philippines politics, with some arguing that this has led to the decline in democratic values and institutions. So the rule of social capital. Despite these changes, the Philippines retains strong social capital with strong family and community ties, which can play a role in mitigating the negative impact of globalization. So nakaka-affect po ito sa atin, which is dito po sa ating bansa. Dahil ano po baga, mayroong mga issues about globalizations in the politics, like complex process which has many phases or facets, among which the more important for the Philippines are economic integration, political marginalization on the part of South, cultural homogenization, environmental degradation, and international migration. So, what are the common issues in the Philippines politics? Political position provides extensive opportunities for patronage and clientelism, and electoral fraud are common. Corruption is considered widespread. Yes, marami po tayong nakita ng mga politician na kinukurap yung pera natin. So which is ito po nangyayari po sa atin ngayon. So which is while state institutions are relatively weak, so politics has been heavily influenced at times by the Catholic Church, the Philippine military, and the United States. So, kumbaga, ang nangyayari sa globalization in Philippines politics and governance, so the Philippines is described as a nation state. Globalization is the increasing integration and interaction between countries through trade, technology, cultural exchange, bringing both opportunities and challenges for political and economic sovereignty. In globalization about the politics, here's are the example. The politics globalization refers to the ripple effects and continuity of political relationship between countries, setting up international organizations such as the UN, NATO, WTO, which debates and regulate international politics and trade, is also an example of this type of globalization. So, ito po ngayon, hearing po ngayon is about our former President Rudy Duterte in the Senate. So, aside from the Senate, they accuse him as a killer, or he accused them as a murderer. Also, ngayon po ay inaresto po siya at pinupunta at kinuha sa ICC na walang tamang process due process. So hindi baga makatarungan yung pagdakip sa kanya, kasi hindi po nakasaad at hindi rin naka due process or either sa tama po na pagdakip. So, yun. At ngayon ay na-stranded po ngayon si former Rudy Duterte ngayon sa Hague, which is kung saan ngayon ay doon po siya ay namalagi at doon po siya dinala sa Netherlands, sa bansang Netherlands. So ngayon, ito po ay talagang makikita natin yung popularization, which is makita po natin yun kasi grabe yung dagsa ng mga tao. So, pakita ko po sa inyo ngayon. Man ang globalization. So, kasi nakikita natin kung ano po talaga yung ginagawa ni Rudy Duterte. So, it's in the past 6 years na termino niya sa pagiging presidente niya, ay makikita po natin na maganda yung kalakaran niya doon at so nakita din natin kung paano niya pinapaganda yung Boracay. So which is paano po natin pinapaganda yung lugar ng Manila ngayon, which is yung punong-puno ng basura noon sa termino ni Rodrigo Duterte ay maging malinis naman. Kagaya ng Boracay ay nagiging white sand. So nakikita naman natin yung lahat sa ating mga television o TV or sa mga newscaster po. So even though marami ding pupunta doon na mga turista po. So at saka marami ding drugs addicts or mga surrenderies, NPA surrenderies sa panahonan po ni former President Rodrigo Duterte po. So which is yun po ay nakasalalay po sa isang leader na maganda ang plataforma o maganda ang kanyang gusto nga magiging sa kanyang mga katauhan po dito sa bansa, which is kung sino yung may pagmamahal po sa lahat ng tao, no? Kagaya po ng ating mga Pilipino po na galing abroad, so which is OFW na naging stuck up po doon sa OFW na sa ibang bansa na lalong pinahirapan po ng ating mga employers nila doon po. So ayun, at natulungan din naman po ni Rodrigo Duterte, which is a former president na Rua Rodrigo Duterte po, na makauwi dito po sa Pilipinas. So ayun, yun po yung globalization of politics noon. So ngayon, makikita po natin is, alam naman natin po lahat na ang pagpalalakad ni President Marcos Jr. ay talaga pong binabatikos po sa lahat ng tao po. So ayun, nakita naman natin na lahat po na nakita ng video ay ayoko muna pong i-mention. So kayo na po lahat ang humusga sa nakakita ng mga video po. Okay po ba? And then aside po nun is parang nababalik na po yung kung ano yung pinapalinis ni Rodrigo Duterte sa kanyang termino, at ngayon ay parang nababalik po. So wala po tayong naaasahan sa ngayon na politika. So in terms of issues or affected on us as a person here at the Philippines, we are not gusto talaga nila ng kaguluhan. So it said that ito po yung nababasa natin sa kanyang termino. The human rights situation in the Philippines has improved slightly under President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Drugs war killings continued with near impunity but have become less frequent. Yet, the government still refuses to cooperate with the International Criminal Court's investigation into possible crimes against humanity, despite Marcos' assurance to the international community that he is prioritizing human rights and abuses such as intrajudicial killings, enforced disappearances, and harassment and intimidation of critics through red tagging still occur. So, ayan po. So, yan po ang ginagawa po ng ating presidente po ngayon. So, pinapadakip po nila si Rodrigo Duterte, which is kanila po talagang plaplanuhan po lahat po. So, ayun po. Ito po yung politics and press under pressure in the Philippines. So, in brief, in 2023, the Philippines face serious transportation issues and political controversies. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. was criticized for his frequent foreign travels and inflated travel budget for 2024 despite significant over-confidential in 2022. Disputes around allocation of confidential government funds, increased attacks on media groups, red tagging, and widespread human rights violations instigated protests and concerns about press freedom in the Philippines. So here's all the ito po yung mga resulta po ng ating mga ginagawa po ni sa ating political po. Silaki po yung mga impact po ng political globalization po sa ating bansa. So, kagaya rin po ng ating mga
Filipinos, but which has often failed. To see why, join me in this brief look at the civilization the Philippines did not exist. And I don't mean the name which was given to the islands to honor the then heir to the Spanish throne, Philip II. Rather, before the Spanish, there was no unified independent polities known as barangays, which were ruled by datus, competed with each other, and occasionally went to war. Some of the more important ones were Manila, Tondo, Namayan, Cebu, etc. This is while Hinduism and Chinese influence were more likely in trading hubs like Manila and Tondo. Further north, in the highlands of the Luzon Islands, there were the Ifugor. And all throughout the future country, there were the Negritos or Ita people, the original inhabitants of the islands who had a nomadic hunter-gatherer lifestyle and an animistic religion. Into this cultural landscape stepped in the Spanish when on March 1521, Ferdinand Magellan arrived with his men. Magellan's expedition had been looking for a way to the Moluccas, the famed Spice Islands, and convert the natives into Catholicism. Apu did not take kindly to his advances, especially after he ordered his homes burned, and on April 27, 1521, they killed him in battle and expelled the Spanish temporarily from the archipelago. His own civil and military governors made him extremely powerful. Outside of Manila, however, authority was divided between native leaders who helped govern, known as the Principalia, who held the most power. There were lots of people from the barangays into larger, more centralized pueblos, or towns, where they built imposing stone churches in the center of each, as the friars grew more repressive, and the natives started to resist. Mestizos, Filipinos of mixed Spanish or Chinese blood, with nationalist tendencies, began to emerge. Rizal, doctor of medicine, poet, novelist, sculptor, painter, linguist, naturalist, and fencing enthusiast. Executed by the Spanish in 1896, Rizal epitomized the Filipinos' dignified struggle for personal and national freedom. By killing such figures, the Spanish were creating martyrs. Andres Bonifacio, in colored sashes denoting rank, the Katipunan membership, both men and women, peaked at an estimated 30,000 in mid-1896. In August, the Spanish got wind of the coming revolution, and the Katipunan leaders were forced to flee the capital. Depleted, frustrated, and poorly armed, the Katipuneros took stock in nearby Balintawak, a barangay of Caloocan, and voted to launch the revolution regardless. With the cry of Mabuhay ang Pilipinas, long live the Philippines, the Philippine Revolution lurched into life following the incident that is now known as the Cry of Balintawak. After 18 months of bloodshed, most of it Filipino blood, a Spanish Ronaldo agreed to go into exile in Hong Kong in December 1897. Predictably, the Pac's demand satisfied. This led to a war in April 1898, which drew the Philippines as a colony of Spain into the conflict, sailed into Manila Bay, and routed the Spanish ships. Keen to gain Filipino support, Dewey welcomed the return of exiled Revolutionary General Aguinaldo and oversaw the Philippine Revolution Phase II, which installed Aguinaldo as president of the First Philippine Republic. The Philippine flag was flown for the first time during Aguinaldo's proclamation of Philippine independence in Cavite on June 12th in his Republican Party, and agreeing to take over the islands. Echoing the imperialists, McKinley opined that because Filipinos were unfit for self-government, he had no choice but to take over the islands and quote-unquote civilize them. Filipinos led by Aguinaldo had other ideas. Within 35 years, the literacy rate among Filipinos had risen from a minuscule percentage to almost 50%, and 27% of the population could speak English in 1935, along with the drafting of a U.S.-style constitution and the first national election. On paper at least, democracy and freedom had at least come to the Philippines. Unfortunately, World War II dominance of Manila, with provincial politicians gaining power and in some cases de facto autonomy. Universal suffrage saw an expansion of voter participation, although power remained concentrated in the hands of a small elite. Despite the landed elite continuing to dominate the legislature, a diversifying post-war economy saw politicians who were not primarily from agricultural backgrounds come to executive power. The post-war period until 1965, known to Filipinos as the Third Republic, was a competition between the Nacionalista and Liberal parties and the strong personalities that led them. Men such as Elpidio Quirino, Ramon Magsaysay, and Diosdado Macapagal. In fits and starts, they tried reforming and liberalizing the economy, and the Philippines seemed to be slowly moving in the right direction, but things were about to change. In 1965, Ferdinand Marcos, a dashing former lawyer from a prominent Ilocos political family, was elected the Philippines' fourth post-World War II president under the seductive slogan, "This nation can be great again." At first, it indeed was a new era, and Marcos and his even more charismatic public funding and blatant corruption triggered a wave of protests in Manila. When several demonstrators were killed by police outside the presidential Malacañang Palace, Marcos' image as a political savior died with them. Citing the rise of leftist student groups and the Communist New People's Army, or NPA, Marcos imposed martial law on the entire country in 1972.
I signed Proclamation number 1081, placing the entire Philippines under martial law.
Normally accounts are taken over by the military, international travel was banned, and thousands of anti-government suspects were rounded up and put into military camps. Marcos would not lift martial law until 1981. His end was brought about by People Power, a movement born in the streets of Manila in 1986. Immensely popular opposition figure Ninoy Aquino. Aquino had been a political prisoner and then gone into exile. Cory Aquino, Ninoy's widow, became the reluctant at first standard-bearer of the opposition at the instigation of the Roman Catholic Church. Marcos came out the winner of the election, but the people knew Cory had been cheated, and they were no longer to be silenced. On February 26th, at this point the U.S. stepped in and advised Marcos to let go. Hurriedly, the Marcoses boarded a U.S. aircraft and flew to Hawaii and into exile. Soon returned to the Philippines. Despite evidence that she and her husband helped themselves to billions of dollars from the Treasury, Imelda lives freely in Manila and was later elected to her fourth term in Congress in 2016, once for Leyte and thrice for Ilocos Norte. Politics since the fall of Marcos has been tumultuous, largely because the stable party system that existed before Marcos never returned. Instead, today the country has weak political parties that tend to coalesce not around sets of policies which stir little debate, but around leaders with vivid personalities who win elections. In the 1990s, the country aggressively privatized and liberalized the economy under Fidel Ramos, but the 1998 Asian crisis left it in bad shape, and the president elected to clean up the mess, Joseph Estrada, failed badly. Soon he would face an impeachment trial over corruption allegations. This would see millions of Filipinos take to the streets to support his removal, and he was forced to resign. The country's second People Power revolution in 15 years. Estrada gave way to his vice president, Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, daughter of the former president, whose nearly 10 years in office were also dogged by scandals, including alleged improprieties in her 2004 re-election and in 2007 congressional elections, misuse of public funds, and, well, general plunder and corruption. In the 2010 presidential elections, the country found the fresh face it was looking for in the form of Benigno Noynoy Aquino III, the previously squeaky clean son of Corazon Aquino, hero of the first People Power Revolution in 1986. Riding a wave of national grief after his mother's death in 2009, Aquino won a landslide victory with 42% of the votes, emerging from a pack of candidates which included former President Estrada. Even while the Philippines' economy grew quickly, still nearly 10% was based on remittances. Talk of impeaching President Aquino was bandied about after he instituted the Disbursement Acceleration Program, or DAP, essentially a way for Aquino to bypass the legislature, and according to Hideo of Davao, beat his closest rival by more than 6 million votes in the 2016 presidential elections. He immediately implemented a war on drugs that led to thousands of deaths. The opposition, outraged, insisted these were human rights abuses and a breakdown of the rule of law, criticism that was echoed abroad. But at home, it made no difference. Duterte was, and continues to be, one of the most popular Filipino presidents ever. In part, this was because of the roaring economic growth the Philippines was experiencing until 2019. Still, even after COVID put an end to that, Duterte retains majority approval. Because of that, it is still unclear whether his influence will persist even after his term is over in June 2022. For now, he's announced he will run for the vice presidency, but there's also the option to support his daughter for president. Whatever happens, the Philippines will continue to face enormous challenges for quite a while yet.